Welcome to the Choir Conductor podcast. Each episode features a conversation with people in the choir or music education profession. I am your host, Zach Thompson. Let's start the show. My guest today is Dr. Stephen Barr. He is an award-winning composer and conductor working in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He writes in a variety of mediums, from modern concert music of all genres to contemporary film score and music for media in orchestral electronic hybrid styles. His concert music has been performed by the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, Florida Orchestra, American Academy of Conducting Orchestra, and Aspen Contemporary Ensemble, and the Master Chorale of Tampa Bay, as well as the University instrumental and vocal ensembles, and appeared on the programs of national and international music conferences. Dr. Barr is the director of choirs at Slippery Rock University, where he conducts 3 choral ensembles and is the interim conductor of the Symphonic Wind Ensemble. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Barr.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So whenever I first started on this endeavor, you were definitely one of the ones on the top of my list to talk to because you've been immensely influential in my musical career, and I definitely wanted to talk to you about your musical upbringing and your views on how you're doing things with music now. So I'm glad we're getting this chance to talk.
Definitely. It's great.
Yeah, so let's start by having you talk about your musical upbringing. Did you come from a musical family?
No, not at all. My parents had no musical training. I just started singing in choir in like 6th grade. I don't even remember how I ended up doing that. Maybe I was placed in it. I don't know, but I liked it, and so I kept doing it. And in the 8th grade, I took up trombone. I always tell this story because I think it's funny. I wanted to be a saxophone player, but when I went to my band director in the 8th grade, and I'm just a little 8th grader, and I went up to him and said, I want to play in the band. And my choir director, who was kind of a tyrant, was standing right beside him. Great guy, but that was kind of how he did things. He said, I said, I want to play saxophone. He said, no, you will play trombone because this man needs trombones. And I just went, okay. And I took a left turn and got into the world of trombone. I could have been a saxophone player. But anyway, I played trombone throughout high school and decided, I don't know, somewhere during high school that I wanted to be a band director of all things. I had thought for a while that I was going to be a doctor, like a medical doctor, but somewhere along the way that changed. And so I went to school. I don't know how far you want me to go with this, but just stop me if I ramble.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't have any, other than that, I didn't have any musical upbringing. So somewhere along the way, I just decided that I wanted to be a band director, and I went to school for music education. And all these years later, I never actually got to the band director part until I was just happened to get the chance to be the interim director of our wind ensemble for a while because of some events that led to us not being able to fill that position, and somebody needed to do it, and I said, I'll do it. And so I did it. But it took, 20 years for me to actually get to the band director part, and I took a couple detours through composition and choral conducting, but it's been fun. But yeah, no musical upbringing really.
Yeah.
My parents were super supportive. That's a great thing, but they didn't specifically point me in that direction or anything.
Yeah, well, that's great that they're supportive. And what college did you go to for your undergrad?
Undergrad was a little school called Westminster College. I say that to people and they all go, oh, the choir college. Yeah. No. This is a little school buried in northwestern Pennsylvania, north of Pittsburgh, a little Presby school, about 1,500 people. I remember, I sound like an old man telling all my stories. It's funny. I remember when I went there for some reason, I went there for it wasn't music, it was like some, I don't know, school, like language thing or something. I was on the campus and I told one of my friends, I'll never go to school here. And well, I did.
That's right.
But it's a great school. It's a wonderful place. It was a really good experience. And it certainly, I had great professors, and it certainly set me up for the rest of what I did after that.
Well, yeah, great. And then what got you into composition?
Left turns, man, left turns. Um, I started as a music education major, and honestly, I hit education courses, and I hated them. And
Uh-huh.
I thought, this is not really for me. Um, so I changed my major to composition, because at the same time I had been, I was going through theory courses like any undergraduate student does, and I kind of latched onto those and really liked them and what I was learning. And before I knew it, I was dabbling and writing things. I think I wrote things in high school too, but I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it. The more I wanted to do it more, and I started taking lessons with the professor who taught theory, who was a composer himself, and they happened to have a composition program on the books. So I think it was like my early junior year. I asked if I could switch, and I did, and
Nice.
and that was how that got started.
Okay, and then so you're like a junior or senior and you're getting into composition. And
Right,
then you decide to go get your master's
in composition.
in composition.
Every
And
every
then
degree every degree is in composition. I'm an interesting creature that way, you know.
right.
I got all my degrees in composition. I got a master's at University of South Florida. Had a fantastic experience at South Florida. My teacher was a guy named Jim Lewis. I love Jim, and I don't even know if he's still alive at this point. I used to babysit his dog. Every summer, he would take a trip to Cuba. He would sail his boat from Tampa Bay to Cuba. This man was,
Whoa.
yeah, it was great. Um, I didn't want to go, but probably would have taken me if I'd asked. But he would sail to Cuba every summer, and I'd watch this little dog of his, this little white, I don't know, what's it called, Westie or something like that, cute dog. But he taught me a lot about composing. He taught me how to be very um, self-critical in a good way, and to just continually revise and look for ways to make things better, just to continually go over and over and over something until I can get it in as polished a shape as I can. Really fantastic guy. I hated having lessons with him because the lessons always went the same way. I'd bring him a piece, and I don't know how much you want me to talk about composition, but
No, yeah, go for it.
he like I said, if I get too far off the path, just rein me in. I'd go into the lesson, and I'd sit by the door, and he'd sit across from me, and we'd both be kind of facing the piano a little bit, and he would look at my stuff. I did my stuff on my computer, but he never did anything on the computer until he was put in. Everything was on the piano, and by him looking at it. Actually, one time for fun, when we were both using Finale at the time, he showed me one of his compositions. He must have been in a good mood or something. He programmed all the patches to percussion sounds and played his composition, and we just both laughed at it. It was hilarious. But I'd bring him my music, whether it was a handwritten sketch or something more fleshed out, or if I had started putting in the computer or whatever, and he'd sit it on the piano bench, and he'd sit there and look at it for like 10 minutes, nothing but silence. Every now and then he might ask a question. Every now and then, he was an older fellow, so he'd reach out one of his hands, gnarled hand, and play a chord on the piano or play a couple notes. And then after like 10 or 12 minutes, he'd look up at me and he'd go, "I like it." And then he would spend the rest of the lesson telling me what I did wrong and what he didn't like. But it was always, "I like it" first. And I used to leave the lessons really, really mad. But I finally figured out, like my second year there, that I think he was waiting for me to defend myself. Like my first year, I just kind of took all the abuse, fixed things, and then came back and did it again. But my second year, I started standing up a little bit, and he's like, "You need to change this. You need to change this." No, I can't change that. This is why. And then the dynamic changed. He would back down if I had a good defense. He'd like, "Okay." So he taught me a lot about being critical and about craft, and which is really, that's my only criteria when I look at composing. That there's no right or wrong about like notes and harmonic language and style. There's no right or wrong there. It's just craft. Does the piece hold together? Does it have something to say? Is it articulate? That's the only thing I care about when I listen to a piece of music is craft. I don't try to impose harmonic styles or anything like that on anyone. But that's what he taught me, and that's probably the most valuable lesson I ever learned, not just in composing, but in a lot of ways.
Sure, that's great. And then how did you get involved with conducting and working with choirs?
So when I was at South Florida, I started getting interested in conducting, and I took a wind conducting seminar and some private lessons in orchestral conducting with a guy named William Wiedrich, who's still there. He's the director of the orchestras there. He's a really fantastic guy. He was directing the wind ensemble at the time, and at some point he moved over and took over the orchestras. But a really good wind conducting seminar class, and we looked at some really cool stuff like the whole suites and the Ingolf Dahl Sinfonietta and things like that. And then I did lessons with him in orchestral conducting on like Beethoven 1 and Debussy Prelude, The Afternoon of Faun, and he was just really, I didn't know it at the time because I was just getting into it, but he's a really smart guy and really good at what he does and a really good teacher. And I still have a few, I wish I remembered more of what he taught me. I still have a couple important takeaways that I keep with me from working with him for a short time. When I went to West Virginia University and did my doctoral work, I was again in composition. I don't actually have any degrees in conducting. Everything's in composition with conducting as, I don't know, like cognates or something, whatever you want to call it. But I was lucky enough to be able to take lessons with the director of choral activities, Kathleen Shannon, who was an important mentor of mine, and the director of bands at the time, a guy named Don Wilcox, and get to actually conduct the ensembles in performances of my music and with the choir. I think I did one or two other things with them too, which was really generous of them because I wasn't a conducting major, but I still got podium time.
Wow.
So they must have liked me, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of all started. I took a set of three choral pieces that I wrote called Dreamland to the I showed them to my composition professor, John Beal, another guy who did really great things for me. One of the first lessons I had with him, I showed these pieces to him, and he said, well, we ought to get the choir to perform these. Take them down to Kathy Shannon and talk with her. And so I went down and talked with her. She had an office on the basement floor. They had like offices tucked in the weirdest places in that building. She had kind of a dungeon office, unfortunately. And I brought him in and I introduced myself to her, and I said, I wanted to bring these pieces to you. Dr. Beal said I should bring them, and he thinks it would be good to perform. I'd love if you perform them. And I don't remember how we got onto this, but I said, if you perform them, I would be happy to sing in choir or something like that. Okay. She didn't know that I was trained in voice or anything. And she's like, oh, okay, well, let me hear what you can do. And so I sang for a little bit, and she's like, deal. And then our relationship just got better from there. And she's a great woman, and I learned a lot from her too. And she was very, very generous with her podium time, not just for me, but for other people as well. So by the time I got done doing my doctoral work at WVU, I had quite a bit of experience conducting as well, thanks to the generosity of people willing to give me lessons and podium time. And I left WVU and I went back to Florida for a few years. And I actually took I don't know if you'd call it a year off, but I didn't do much for a year. I thought I was burnt out after all that work. And so I stayed away kind of from music for a year, and then realized that I probably wasn't as burnt out as I thought I was and needed to get back to it. And I needed a gig of some sort. I was bumming around, not really doing much of anything. And at the time, and I don't know if it's still that way down there right now or not, but at the time, the population of school age children in Florida was exploding so rapidly, and so I think the population of Hillsborough County, which is Tampa and everything, exploding by like 200,000 people a year or something like that. It was some number, and they were building one high school, one middle school, and one elementary school a year, and they couldn't keep up with the population growth. I mean, they had trailers behind every. I mean, that's still a pretty frequent sight, I think, down there, right? Trailers behind every school, temporary classrooms or whatever. And so they needed teachers, and they needed teachers so bad that they would hire you as a teacher as long as you had some degree that was associated with the subject you wanted to teach. They would give you a temporary 3-year certification. I said, well, I got a music degree.
Right.
Teach. And so I took 2 gigs. I took 2 interviews, one for a band director gig and one for a choral director gig. And I still wanted to be the band director. I took the band director interview first, and then I went and did the choral interview. And the choral people, a place called Sickles High School, Northwest Tampa, they wanted to hire me on the spot. And I said, well, let me go home and think about it. I called the principal of the other school. I said, look, they want to hire me. I need to know what you're going to do, because I wanted the band gig. And they said, well, we don't know what we're going to do yet. And I said, well, I have to take the sure thing. And so I took the choral gig. And so I taught 2 years of high school choral music, and that was a really interesting experience. I learned from that. And then the gig up here at Slippery Rock opened, and I got it, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah.
So I'm here by just a series of wrong turns, I guess. It's not,
right.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that if you'd asked me 15 years ago what I was going to be doing today, I wouldn't have told you this. I went to school, at West Virginia, thinking that I wanted to teach collegiate composition, be a composition teacher, and I don't know, maybe some part of me might enjoy doing that. But it's not like a priority anymore.
Right.
It's not something I'm looking to try to get into. If I fell into it by way of another wrong turn, then so be it. We have a few people at Slippery Rock that I teach every now and then, but yeah, I've become a composer who conducts a lot, and it's been great. I love conducting, and I've been blessed with a lot of really cool experiences.
Yeah, and that's it. Just seems like even though you think you have a plan about what you're gonna do, life always takes you down another direction.
It's a beautiful thing in a way,
Yeah.
This is never the plan to be where I'm at right now, but it's cool, it works, and there's a lot of great things about where I'm at right now, and so I don't mind at all. It's just like I said, 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have. 20 years, this is not where I'd envisioned myself, but I definitely don't mean that as a bad thing. It's just, doors open, you go through one, the other one's shut, and then you got a new set of doors.
Right. Yeah. So talk about kind of the layout or even just the schedule of the different choirs that you have at Slippery Rock University.
Okay. At Slippery Rock, let's see. I think my bio said 3, and you read that, and then I realized I need to change that. When I started, I did 2 choirs. There was the chamber singers, which you were in, the small league choir, and then the big concert choir, which fluctuates depending on the year and the semester from anywhere to 50 to 70. It's been as big as 70 this year. It's like 50 this semester. It's always a little small in the spring, I think, because just a retention and student teaching and things like that.
Yeah.
And then a few years down the road, we got big enough that I needed to have a separate women's choir. And so I just kind of made that decision one day on the spur of the moment, because we'd had auditions, and I had 90 women. And it's like, I can't put all these people in concert choir. It's going to be insane. So I split them off and made a women's choir, and we've had it ever since. So I was doing 3 choirs for a while. I took on the wind ensemble gig for a little while, and when I did that, I needed to give something up because everything was getting too crazy, and so I gave the chamber singers to a colleague of mine, and so now I just do concert choir and women's choir, and it's good. It's plenty.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I haven't had the chamber singers for about 3 years now. That's okay. My colleague Christopher Scott's doing a fantastic job with them.
Oh, good. Yeah.
it's nice to have multiple people doing things too. You get different perspectives, and the singers who are in chamber singers get to work with him and me, and so they get a lot of different
Okay.
feedback and approaches and things like that. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And
Um,
so for the choirs, for the concerts, you share like programs usually?
Usually, yeah. Sometimes he does a few different things by himself. He's been working a lot with the jazz band, doing some things there. He's kind of pushing them a little more towards being a vocal jazz pop group,
Okay.
which I think is a good idea because it's popular and
Hmm.
it's something that you can take out in the community and get people interested in. I think it's a good move. And so he's been moving in that direction with it. We just had a concert this past weekend, and they sang like 5 or 6 tunes, and it was really really well done.
Oh, nice. Well, good. So you said that you got start on the trombone. Was there a moment that you knew that you were going to be a music educator no matter what?
No, well, I tried to get out of it for a while.
Oh yeah.
It that's the funny part about the high school gig. I never thought that would happen. I didn't think I wanted to teach that, but circumstances made it so that I did. That's an interesting. I bring that up. I teach a little. I teach a little bit of secondary methods, that little choral component that we do.
Right.
And I don't remember if I brought it up, and I usually bring it up that I was able to get a high school gig for 2 years without having a teaching degree or a certificate, and I think that's interesting because I have this love-hate relationship with academia.
Uh-huh.
We do a lot of really cool things, but we do a lot of things that are not useful or not, or have, I don't know. I wonder about applicability a lot.
Yeah.
Like we do a lot of things that are not applicable and just need to be filled in. That's like filling in blanks or something.
Uh-huh.
Like we have music therapy majors at Slippery Rock. Oh, you need to take vocal conducting. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
A vocal conducting class could be half the size it normally is. We could get a lot more done without the music therapy people. And it's not that I have anything against music therapy. They're wonderful people, and oftentimes they're a lot better conductors. I don't know
Uh-huh.
why. Maybe it's because they're better in tune with themselves or something, which I think is
Right.
really important with conducting. But they don't need to take it.
Uh-huh.
Their clients don't care whether they can beat a four pattern or not, or do anything else that's associated with that. And it's the same thing with theory. Most people don't really care what an augmented sixth chord is after they learn about it, and it's not really going to affect their life one way or the other. I mean, unless you're a nerd and like that type of stuff, like
Uh-huh.
me.
Right.
But I dig augmented sixth chords, but I realize that most other people don't, and
Uh-huh.
they're not going to remember what they are. So I don't have the answer for that. I just know that I have a love-hate relationship with it. So the interesting thing about it is if I was able to teach for 2 years, and I wasn't great, but I think I was fairly successful. We did good things. We went to contests and got superiors and excellence and things like that.
Nice.
We went and toured and had several concerts, and we were actually if I had stayed longer, we were in the beginning stages of developing a program to do a musical every spring.
Oh
Which
wow.
school didn't have. That's probably my one regret leaving, is that I didn't get to implement that.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is, but it's one thing we wanted to do, but this gig came up and I had to make a decision. Unfortunately, that's what happens sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But if I was able to get a gig teaching high school for 2 years without a degree and be moderately fairly successful, what does that say about, do we actually need to have degrees? I don't know.
Right.
You see the same thing in college, great in music and in any discipline, just because you're really good at something, like just because you're a good composer or a good conductor doesn't necessarily mean you're good at teaching it,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what degrees you have. And then on the other hand, you might not be the best trombone player in the world, but maybe you're really good at teaching middle school band. you don't necessarily have to be great. I think you have to be competent for sure, but you don't have to necessarily be like a virtuoso performer on your instrument to be a great teacher. There's
Right.
different skill sets, and we try to teach things that are going to help you be successful. But there's certain things that we can't teach either. I mean, I learned everything on the job. I
Yeah.
didn't have ed psych and things like that. I dropped out of those classes. I couldn't handle them in high school, in college, because I hated them.
Mm-hmm.
But I sure had to learn fast once I was on the job how to deal with some of that stuff. So I don't know. It's an interesting dichotomy, I guess. But yeah, so I didn't have a moment where I knew I was going to be an educator because I tried to get out of it. But I don't regret having been one and still being one. Again,
Right.
that high school experience, going through that door, has allowed me to get here and taught me a lot about, how I do things now. So
Mm-hmm.
the world's weird. Life is strange.
Yeah. What did you think about the Florida MPA contests?
The MPA contests, I liked the concept of them. I didn't always like the judging of them.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure, and this is going to sound arrogant, but I'm pretty sure I knew more than the judges. In most cases, not always.
Mm-hmm.
The comments I would always take lightly and try not to be overly offended or upset by any negative comments. And I think that's a good thing for everybody. The comments are, I'm going off into a different story to answer your question.
That's
but
okay.
I'll try to make it quick. I don't remember if it was when you were here or not, but some point, like 5, 6, 7 years after I started here, I decided that I needed more training in conducting. And so I went down and I talked to Bob Page at Carnegie Mellon University, who died this past summer. And it upsets me because I didn't know him half as well as I wanted to. And actually, the last email that he ever sent me was talking about getting together. And in my lessons, because Bob Page was old and wizened, and he looked like a wizard or something. You put a wizard hat on him, he'd fit the role of like Gandalf or something. Great. But in our lessons, and I'm 40 now, but I was 30 something then. He would call me Tiger. I'm like, nobody calls me Tiger except you. Bob Page can do whatever he wants.
Right.
And so the last email that the man ever sent me was talking about getting together. He's like, when are we going to get together? I miss you, Tiger. And like, damn it, I didn't follow up on that. And so that's like a regret, and I didn't know him as well as a lot of other people, but he was really good to me. And he was kind enough to give me independent lessons. I would go to his flat in Pittsburgh for 2 hours, like once every 2 weeks.
Oh,
And
wow.
we worked on Brahms Requiem, we worked on Mozart Requiem, we worked on Carmina Burana, we worked on Handel, coronation anthems, just all kinds of choral orchestral stuff. And he taught me a boatload about conducting. But he, at one lesson, I was getting very frustrated because I wasn't able to do what he was asking me to do. And he stopped and said, listen, he said, everything I'm saying, this is just one man's opinion. As if, that was the lesson. It's just this is one person's opinion. And so that's one thing of his that's really stuck with me. And so I relate that to a lot of things. When I teach conducting, that's one of the first things I say is, look, this is just one person's opinion. There's no right or wrong in conducting. This is just what I think you might want to try to do. And so when people go to MPAs and they get all worked up, and I know people do that. We didn't get a superior and everything,
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Oh, well, remember, an excellent's a pretty good score,
Right.
But I would get comments sometimes, and I had to learn to just kind of look past those as being one man's opinion or one woman's opinion, as the case may be, and sometimes just realize that I didn't agree with them.
Mm-hmm.
But the process, I think, is really useful. I think it's important to and it's important to get the groups out of the schools and performing and learning. If nothing else, you get to hear some things. And if they do, I don't remember if they do clinics down there or not after the performances, but, we do
like a short one.
Right. So you get to hear somebody else come up and say things that hopefully reinforce what you're trying to do.
Right.
Right? right? Exactly.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's really implemented. The great thing about it in Florida is that it's implemented everywhere. Up here in Pennsylvania, it's not implemented very well at all. PMEA has been trying to do this for a long time, and every time I go to one around here, it's like the same six schools.
Uh-huh.
And getting anyone else out of their bunker is really, really difficult.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's almost mandatory down here.
Well,
Like,
that's what I loved about it because I got to beat my principal over the head with that one year. First year I was at the high school gig, I had a really sweet lady as a principal, and she was very supportive. And then she went and retired. I wanted to kill her. And we got this jock, football man,
uh-huh.
big tough guy for a principal. And I went and told him, to requisition the buses for MPA, and he didn't want to give them to me. And I said, "You don't have a choice. This is mandatory. We have to go. It's in the curriculum. Fork out the money for the buses." And that was a satisfying moment. You don't get to stick it to admin very much like that. Not that I'm
Right.
looking for opportunities, but I knew what this guy was all about, and he couldn't have cared less about music. And so the ability to use the curriculum against him in that case was very satisfying. So I mean, I think the MPAs, they do a lot of good things. They're not perfect. Nothing ever is.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, it's definitely intense.
yes,
Like
and I think
coming
that's what
from
I think.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think that's what's getting. Everybody treats it as maybe too intense. I think we should just treat it for what it is. It's an
Yeah.
opportunity to go out and perform, get some feedback, and find ways to get better.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think if your choir gets an A and a B and a C, I don't think it's the end of the world that you get a C in something, or whatever the equivalent score is.
Yeah.
That's what I had to. One year we got in like an excellent in something, and the choir was just horribly distraught, and I was like, wait.
Uh-huh.
Let's put all this in perspective, okay? I'm kind of glad that I didn't get all superiors. I don't want superiors being handed out like candy.
Right.
I try to be very honest when I do them. I'm never like, "Oh, good, you perform, high marks."
Uh-huh.
I try to be honest and award things the way I see it, and give hopefully something that's good feedback. And when I go up on stage and clinic with a group for 10 minutes or whatever, I try to do something productive with them. That's what it's all about. I think the scores are secondary to the process, to the
Sure.
learning process.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get tripped up on scores. It's easy to get tripped up on numbers and letters and stuff, but
Yeah.
it's not what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Do you have a favorite musical experience? It could either be as a performer or just as an audience member.
I don't think so. Not I have some not favorite ones.
Yeah.
But I think as a conductor, my favorite musical experience is usually whatever I last did,
Uh-huh.
especially if it was done well. When we did Carmina, that's probably something that's still up there in the top 5 of
Mm-hmm.
things we've done. That was really, I'm very critical of myself. Maybe Jim Lewis did his job too well, but um, I don't, I don't walk away from many things feeling like super satisfied. I might be happy with something, and I've tried to learn how to put things in perspective, just like I was saying a minute ago. For what it was, or for what we were trying to accomplish, this was well done. But Carmina is definitely one of the things that I thought it's right at the top of the list because of the amount of work involved and the
Yeah.
fact that we were able to involve almost the entire music department. I guess for people listening, we did a performance of Carmina Burana in 2013 with the not the orchestra version, but the wind band transcription by Juan Vicente das Miles or something. I can't remember his whole name. Big long Spanish name. It's a pretty good transcription. I actually kind of like it better than the orchestral because I think it's a little more visceral.
Uh-huh.
But maybe I'll change my mind if I ever get to do the orchestral one.
Sure.
But that was a great thing because of just all the involvement and the huge audience and the interest, and it was very, very satisfying. But I've done some other things that I think are on par with that. So I don't know. Were you here when we did Duraflame Requiem? That was one of my first things. Duraflame Requiem with Richard Elliott.
That was awesome.
That was great, isn't it? And that's
that was
piece.
lots of fun.
Yeah, and that piece is hard, man. It's such a hard piece. It's so hard to sing well.
Especially if you don't grow up Catholic.
Right? Yeah. Well, okay, so now here you go. Here's probably what's the most satisfying thing, and every year we've gotten to the point where we can usually do some kind of big work, choral masterwork every year. Mm-hmm. And so I try to make sure I do one every year. Recently, it's been, with collaborations. If we don't do one on campus, like with Butler or with Erie Chamber, we're actually doing the Vaughan Williams Dona Nobis Pacem on Saturday.
Great.
With Erie Philharmonic. I'm ticked because I can't be there because I'm going to be in Tennessee. But,
oh, no.
So I haven't figured out how to split myself in half. But I love the Dona Nobis Pacem. It's a fantastic work. It's just amazing. Vaughan Williams is a underrated, underperformed composer, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. The process of putting together a symphonic masterwork and watching people be initially resistant and then learning to accept and love the work. And then when you finally put it together with everything and they get up there with the orchestra or the whatever the symphonic ensemble is and do it, and then they come out of that and they go, you know what? I didn't like this when we started, but that was amazing. That's my favorite thing right there.
Yeah.
And it happens every single time. Mm-hmm. It just happened this last weekend with my community choir. We did Howard Hanson's Song of Democracy. Howard Hanson, also another awesome composer. And that's a short little 12-minute work. But the Hanson's harmonic language is slightly challenging. It's very tonal, but he uses a lot of like seventh and ninth chords and major sevenths and things like that were not necessarily, you don't hear them in classical harmony a lot, but you also don't hear them in kind of the blasé contemporary styles that we hear nowadays, unless you're listening to jazz,
Right.
It's like if you would listen to like old TV shows or film scores, it's that kind of harmonic language, like 70s and 60s type stuff, which I happen to love. But my choir was very resistant to it, and I had at least 10 people either email me or come up and tell me during the process, boy, I didn't like this piece when we started, but now I'm singing it every day. And one person told me it moved them to tears, and then several me after we did the performance how amazing it was. That's the thing. That's the thing that I love. So every time that happens, that's my favorite musical experience. I found it.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, I can remember even from Slippery Rock and other schools and choirs I've been involved with, it's always been the ones that stick out the most in my mind are the masterworks or the large format works. I mean, they take the most amount of work. It's the most amount of time, the most amount of people. But once it finally comes together, it's more satisfying.
It's important to do them. I mean, if I'm not doing one of those, I tend to program a lot of new music because I'm a composer, and I think it's really important that we program new music to keep things alive. And but I like the museum pieces. That's what I call them because there's so many good ones, especially in the masterworks. The other thing is that, when you do this, and we did Vivaldi Gloria when I was at Sickles, and, it was ugly, but we did it. It was an experience that those singers had never had. They'd never done anything with a small string orchestra like that. And, I think that's important. And it's the same thing here now with whether it's Slippery Rock or my community group. This is, for some of them, this will be the only opportunity that they ever have to sing with an orchestra.
Yeah.
Or to perform a given work. We did Beethoven 9 with Butler Symphony Orchestra.
Wow.
Last year, which is amazing because Matt Kramer, the director of that orchestra, has brought that orchestra so far that they could do Beethoven 9.
Wow.
And it went well. And so, I mean, Beethoven 9, how many times do you get to do that in your life?
Yeah. Once.
Maybe once if you're lucky, right?
Yeah.
I've sung it once, and now I've prepared it once.
Uh-huh.
So twice, and I'm 40.
Right.
um, you don't get to do that very often. So an opportunity like that, I just can't. And we're blessed that we've been able to build these relationships with these orchestras where they're coming to us and asking us to sing. I don't have to go ask. They come and say, will you sing? I didn't expect Erie Phil to give me a call, but they did. And I'm glad they did,
Yeah.
So it's great. I get to give these. That's the big thing for me is opportunities like that. And so it's always whatever the latest piece is that we just accomplished, I won't get to see it, but after Saturday, it'll be done in Nobis Pacem.
Yeah.
Because I'll hear about it next week.
Oh yeah.
And I'll be excited that people loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my next big like long-term plan for Sebring High School is so every other year they go to New York, and so on the off year I want to do a larger format work in the spring. So I'm going to try to do Vivaldi Gloria for my first one.
Fantastic. And it's totally doable,
Yeah.
It's any choir can do it.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be willing to take that amount of work on and lead them to it. You remember Brian Helsel?
Yes.
Butler, yeah, they're doing Rudder Magnificat on tomorrow night.
Oh wow.
That's not an easy piece.
No.
It's what you want about Rudder, but it's not a walk in the park.
Uh-huh.
He's going to do that with a high school group and a chamber orchestra, and it'll be good because Brian works hard,
Oh yeah.
So it's totally possible. And I guess that bothers me. I see programs where people are not working, and they're just content to feed their students a diet of this choral schlock that's just saturated the publication market. And it doesn't have to be that way, If I can do it, anyone else can do it. I'm not that good. I'm too stupid to give up, I guess, and I make people go there, but it's entirely possible. Any choir can do it.
Sure.
So it really depends a lot on who's leading the charge, right?
Yeah, right.
That's great. Yeah.
So
you'll love it. Do it.
Yeah, and plus it's, we're going to use public domain scores and everything, so I'll just have to pay for musicians.
Right. Money isn't, you can get around the money things.
Right.
There's ways to do that, and scores right there. You don't need to pay for scores. Yeah, it's just about being resourceful and planning it out and making it happen. Yeah. That's awesome.
Good. So
that's a good little piece. I love Vivaldi Gloria.
Yeah. I've heard it a couple of times, performed it with you.
We did do it, huh? Yeah, we did.
Yeah, that was it might have been my freshman year.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. I
got to do it again, I guess.
Yeah. And I got to do it one other time when I was in my master's. But yeah, that's the plan. So let's talk about kind of your music, and let's kind of stick to specifically choir music. If you could talk maybe about your one or two pieces that, I guess you can say first what you think your most popular piece is, and then maybe what you would like people to know more about that probably isn't as well known.
That's a really good question. I don't have that much music out there in terms of choir. People are more interested in for whatever reason, band and like chamber pieces. Like I write a lot of music for flutes for some reason, probably because they play it and take conferences and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But my most popular choir piece is the one that you did, is the Oxen.
The Oxen, yeah.
Which I'm happy with. I think that's a darn good carol,
It is. Yeah.
I would love
loved it.
Yeah, it does seem to be popular with students, and I think that's cool. I didn't write it to be popular. I don't necessarily ever do that. I don't write it to not be popular. But I write what I think I need to write. But that one turned out really well, and I'm the same way about composing as I am about other things. There's not very many things that I walk away from feeling like super, like that thing's done. I did the best I could on that. But that one, I don't think I'd change anything on it. But I'd love for more people to do that. I think it's very accessible and that's probably the most popular, the one that people hear it and then they want to do it. That's the oxen through. No, I'm just kidding. Um, uh, as far as other pieces go, I think part of the thing with my choir music that makes it more difficult is the fact that I don't write like formulaically or um, uh, everything's a little different, so I don't fit into any kind of peg or hole or whatever, like John Rutter, okay, like John Rutter. If you know John Rutter's music, then you know what most of his music's going to sound like.
Yeah.
It sounds like John Rutter, for better or worse. You
Yeah.
know, that's not a criticism; it's just a fact of the matter.
Right.
If you listen to Eric Whitacre, then you know what Eric Whitacre's music's going to sound like, because all this stuff sounds like that. That's, some people would call that their style, whatever that means. My style is that I'm a little more eclectic, and my whatever, my harmonic and my rhythmic language and my choice of text is not the same as some other stuff that's regarded as being more accessible. My friend James, James Egan.
Yeah.
We were having a talk about this one time, and he told me a story about he had sent some music to I don't remember if it was Oxford or Schott, whatever their pronunciation is. I forget. One of them, New York. Maybe it was Boozy. I don't know. Some New York group. And he didn't hear back from him, and he called him up. He had a contact there or something. He'd sent him a whole bunch of choral music, and the guy they talked to said, "Look, your music's really good, but you're a publisher's worst nightmare, because every one of your pieces sounds different. And we want to publish stuff where people know what they're going to get." That doesn't sound terribly exciting to me,
No.
So, I think because I don't necessarily write things that are like that, not as popular in the choral music community. But to answer your question, beyond the oxen, honestly, my favorite set of pieces that I've written is that set that I mentioned earlier called Dreamland. They're not published. If somebody wants a manuscript, they're welcome to it. I don't plan on publishing them. I've sent them out a couple times and never had any success with them. I have a nice piece published through a little online outfit called Sia.music called Sweet and Low. I like that piece a lot. Actually, I haven't written much choral music lately. I've been busy doing all this other stuff. You write the stuff that people perform and are going to publish or pay for, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess those are the ones. I wrote I like. Did you do I Carry Your Heart? Or is that you? The E. Cummings text?
I think so.
I like that piece a lot too. But those things it's not that they're, I'm not like writing do music or anything, but they just don't grab people. I don't know.
Yeah. I think did we do that at PMEA?
No, I can't remember. We did something else at PMEA, either Sweet and Low or I think we did Sweet and Low at PMEA.
Yeah. So then I probably haven't heard the other one. Then that's probably after me.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that one out.
I did. Did you do Silent Noon?
No.
Silent Noon. I did a choral version of Silent Noon, which quotes the Vaughan Williams song, which I freaking love.
Oh yeah.
Vaughan Williams arranged the Williams song Silent Noon is just, oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, that's like one of my favorites. Yeah,
isn't it? It's a perfect
on my senior.
It's a perfect piece of music. Yeah. There's I run into pieces every now and then, especially with text, where I listen to it, whether it's a choir piece or a song, and I put it on like my band list of music to write, because I feel like, well, the composer did it as well as it can be done. And so Silent Noon is like that, for choir. Sure on the Shining Night, the Sam Barber arrangement, that's on my list. I'm never going to write anything on Sure as the Shining Night, because Barber did it already, and nobody can do it better than what he did, in my opinion. I mean, the Morton Lauritsen one's nice, but it's not better. Right. There's a Z. Randall Stroop one that I don't care for much at all. I think it's Z. Randall Stroop. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But Silent Noon, the song, is on my list. So I'm never going to write a song on Silent Noon. But I wrote a choral piece. That's how I got around it, my own rule. But I love that song so much that I built it off of a quote from his song.
Uh-huh.
So, and that piece is pretty popular too, I think. We did that at a Region 6 district choir, and then my choir did it, and somebody else did it too. I can't remember who now, but yeah. So I mean, I've thrown out most of the recent stuff that not thrown away, but that's most of the recent stuff that I've written. I haven't written a choral piece in a while, actually.
Okay. And is Silent Noon unpublished, or you have that one published?
Silent Noon is unpublished.
Okay. If someone wanted to do that piece, what would be the best way they could do that?
They could just email me. Go through my website. I should probably make sure that link works. Or you can publish my email address if you want when you put this up or whatnot.
Yeah.
I can spell it out if you want, whatever. Yeah, just get in touch with me. I'd be happy to give them a manuscript. It's not published, so it's free right now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
I thought for someone else to take it on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put that on my list. I'd love to check that out. So yeah, and in the show notes on the website, I'll put your website and then all these things that we're talking about. Couple rapid fire questions, and then we can kind of wrap it up. What advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
Don't try to be a band director. No. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff we talked about. Just be open to walking through doors and not afraid to. I get a question. The question that I get from people who are graduating and getting ready to do, they're finishing their undergraduate work. So that puts them at what, 22, 23-ish, something like that. Mm-hmm. So that's just shy of 25. But, it seems like every now and then I get somebody who wants to know, well, should I go do a master's degree now, or should I go do it later? Should I go teach first? I don't think you're closing any doors necessarily. You're just rearranging the order.
Right.
I think the thing is you just have to decide what you think is the best thing for you to do and go through that door and see what happens, Right. So don't be afraid to walk through the door. You don't know what's on the other side of it. You have an idea what's on the other side of it, but you really don't know until you do it. And once you walk through it, then there are other doors. Nobody's ever stuck anywhere or limited in what they can do. It's just a matter of picking a door and walking through it.
Sure. Do you have a favorite app?
App? Like
like on your phone,
like iPad or phone stuff?
Yeah.
Let me think about this for a minute. I have way too many apps. I have my phone and my iPad are loaded with like all kinds of music production apps and sequencers and virtual instruments and just stuff that I download and play with. The app that I use the most is on my iPad is a really cool app called Fourscore. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
It's Fourscore, one word, literally, F-O-R-S-C-O-R-E. You can download PDFs of music onto it through Dropbox or anything else like that, and then you can use a stylus. I have a Pro, so I use my pencil to mark them up. And it's fantastic.
Nice.
It's really, really cool. So I use it for a lot of musical applications to be able to just mark up and quickly erase, and it's just really, really slick. So that's the one that I use the most.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that saves paper that way too, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I love that app. It's great. Cool. There's not very many days where I don't use that app.
Nice. Do you have a favorite book?
Book?
Any type of book.
Any type of book?
Anything.
I grew up being a big fantasy nerd, so it's Tolkien.
Uh-huh.
And right behind Tolkien, though, I've been reading, in my copious amounts of free time, an author by the name of Terry Brooks, who wrote a series. He started it in like 1977 or something like that, called The Sword of Shannara. And there's actually an MTV series on it now.
Yeah.
like Game of Thrones. I haven't gotten to watch it yet. I want to.
I
But Terry Pratchett is a fantastic writer, and so I like his stuff too.
I
I'm a big fan of nerd.
yeah, I'm literally reading volume 2 of that right now.
Nice, you're the man.
Yeah,
You're the man.
my
Go
uncle
back and
gave
read.
me.
After you read the first set, read some of the other ones, and then go back and read, if you haven't read them, go back and read his trilogy that's set in the modern world. It's the first book is called Running with the Demon, and
Okay.
it's totally different. Go back and read those three: Running with the Demon, A Night of the Word, and Angel Fire East. Those are the three books. See how much of a nerd I am? And then once you've done that, once you've read the Shannara trilogy and a few of those books, and then you've read that, then you go, and the next book you read after that is called Armageddon's Children. And I'm not going to tell you what happens, but it's going to blow you away.
Okay.
Okay?
So I
I'll
guess
send you that order later.
yeah.
Trust me. I'll send you the order. I'll send you the reading order. When I read the three books that I just mentioned, just because I knew his writing from Shannara. And I was skeptical, but I read them and I love them. I love the premise.
Uh-huh.
And then when I read Armageddon's Children, I was floored.
Yeah.
That book floored me. So just the way that that's all I can tell you. You got to read it. I don't want to spoil it.
Okay.
And all of you listeners out there, if you like fantasy literature, that's go read Terry Brooks.
That's the way to go. Yeah. There
Amazing.
You go. Yeah, so now I know it takes me so long to read books
I
just
know,
because I
right?
don't have time. But I usually, I do read more in the summers, but so now I got enough to
You've
last
got
me
your
a
reading
couple
list.
years. Yeah.
Exactly. You won't regret it.
Yeah, well, good. I'm looking forward to that. Other than music, this might not even be possible, but because there's time constraints. But do you have any hobbies?
I don't have a lot actually. Reading is what I do if I'm not doing music, and I am an admitted video game fanatic. So
Uh-huh.
if I'm not writing, it's reading, or if I'm not writing or hanging out with my kid or doing something else like that, it's um, hanging out with my girlfriend or whatever. Those are the three things that we're working. Those working, music, hanging out, social life. Being a dad, those are the things. Not doing any of those, then it's either reading or playing a video game.
Yeah.
But video game doesn't happen very often. I have my girlfriend makes fun of me. I have stacks of unopened games.
Oh,
I
wow.
just buy them and add them to my collection of games that maybe I'll play someday.
Yeah, there you go.
Other than that, not really. Part of me would like to be a writer, but I don't have any time for that.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Could you, well, to kind of wrap things up, can you tell us about your programming for the upcoming season? I mean, what's April? Do you have a spring concert left
yeah.
for Slippery Rock?
Yeah, Slippery Rock concert, after they do the Dona Nobis, it's kind of a potpourri thing. It's mostly music, new music. That's what I tend to veer towards. There's not really a theme or anything. We're doing Eric Whitaker's Sleep just because I haven't done it in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of gotten off of Whitaker lately, but I figured it was maybe time to dust one off. We're doing one of James Eakin's pieces called Still Waters. It's really beautiful. Requiem-ish type short piece, not a big multi-movement thing or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of that type of thing. A little tiny, meditation or on a requiem-like text. We're doing two pieces by student composers.
Okay.
Yeah, those will be fun. I think I was doing a piece by a composer from Kent State University, Brian Black. So it's a lot of new music and a few premieres, but no theme there. With my community choir, we're doing the Randall Thompson Frostiana cycle.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I love Randall Thompson. People should do more Randall Thompson.
Yeah, I'm planning on doing in the winter just for long-term planning to use one of the songs for district MPA, I'm going to choose something like A Star on my winter concert
What a great piece, isn't
to
it?
then recycle it. Yeah.
I mean, the poetry is so good. I mean, no one else who has gotten a hold of Frost poetry has done anything even close. Because you can't get a hold of it
Yeah.
now. I mean, look at Sleep. That's the Eric Whitacre story about Sleep is a very interesting story. And I like Sleep, and I like Charles Anthony Silvestri's text
Mm-hmm.
over top of it. I think maybe better than I like the music. Because when you listen to the song and you listen to the text, you can hear the old text.
Right.
Miles to go before I sleep and miles to go before I sleep. You can hear that in the climax of Whitaker's music. I just think it's amazing that Silvestri was able to write a new text over top of Whitaker's music.
Right.
I mean, it had to fit the exact metrical structure of the Frost text. Otherwise, Whitaker would have changed his music.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah, to reverse engineer it that way.
Yeah, right? That's unbelievable. I'm no good at lyrics. I tried it once and I threw them all away. It was horrible. So that just it has me in awe. That would be cool he sounds like he'd be a cool guy to work with. Yeah. I mean, Randall Thompson. So you can't get a hold of Frost lyrics, except for that glut of stuff that came out that's not really any good, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Randall Thompson. I love doing Randall Thompson stuff.
Yeah.
I need to do the Place of the Blessed at some point and other stuff like that. Testament of Freedom. That's a bigger piece. I haven't done that. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're doing right now. Next year we're doing Carmina again with Butler.
Oh, cool.
I won't get to conduct it, but Matt will do a great job. I love working with Matt. So, I haven't figured out the winter yet, but the spring is Carmina.
Well,
So
great.
that's gonna be really cool.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much for being willing to do this.
Absolutely, this is a blast. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Thanks for having.
Yeah, no problem. And I will put some links on your webpage to your music and your site. And I hope that more people, especially choir directors, will start to program your music.
Awesome. Thanks, sir.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Best of you. You're doing great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Choir Conductor podcast. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and leave a review. Go to zachthompsonmusic.weebly.com for show notes, an archive of podcast episodes, and free compositions. Have a great week.